We ready to go live?
You're live.
We're live. Call the meeting back to order. We're on, to the very best of my knowledge, 8.1. Terms of reference, registration, fire, and emergency service providers.
Good morning.
That's okay. I just wanted to bring forward some requested changes in the registration policy for the fire departments. And really a housekeeping issue related to removal of all the COVID exemptions. And then adding in a request for an annual evidence for an annual meeting. So that was really what I wanted to bring forward today. This would be first reading, I would imagine, Pam.
So it was to get rid of the COVID
No,
stuff.
sorry, first,
Yeah.
this is notice of intent. Notice of intent.
Okay, so, yeah, in specific, we wanted to remove all the temporary provisions of accepting the fire tax rate as presented by the fire commissions without reference to the annual general meeting. Those were the exemptions that we had put in during the COVID.
Yeah.
And then we had to come back to council to amend them again, so we wanted to eliminate that and get that out there.
Back to a motion from the commission.
Yeah, yeah, and now, but also, upon legal review, we wanted to add in the establishing the need for the commissions to provide evidence of their annual general meeting. And that is, again, with the generic exceptions, if there's any public health legislations or mandates that council may also accept it. But we're not going to put in dates or anything at that point. It'll be a general exemption, allowing you to accept the
Which probably now prevents them from being able to hold it.
so those are the two changes requested. One housekeeping and basically cleaning up that policy. So,
Somebody prepared to move that we get first notice?
So moved.
Second.
Notice of intention.
Notice of intent.
notice of intention. Good.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. That was
Thank you.
the easiest one we could do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so, we're 8.2, pace bylaw.
Morning, council. So, this agenda item is in follow-up to what was brought before Cal in May. At that meeting, council gave direction on a range of options regarding PACE program providers and so on. So what we have before us today is sort of how that direction has been implemented, both in terms of a bylaw and a policy. So, and then some discussion of what the direction council provided and how some further decisions that may need to be decided around that with that additional information. Ultimately, what would be great is if we could come out of this meeting with notice of intention regarding the bylaw, if that works.
Simplest.
That would be simplest. Now, I'm not sure, Pam, in terms of the mechanics of how, because what we're bringing forward is both the bylaw and also the policy. So how those two relate in terms of the process for adoption, I don't know.
It's a notice of intention to amend or adopt for the bylaw and the same for the policy.
Okay.
But policies only go to readings and they're not advertised,
Okay.
like a boss.
Okay.
And a bylaw would be.
All right, so we can do them in tandem then. Okay, I was just wondering if they had to be sequenced in some way. One thing I will note about the decision to sort of have both a bylaw or a policy is you may not know that some municipal units, not many, incorporate the financial details and the program scope within the bylaw itself, but most do what we have done in terms of separating them out. This allows greater flexibility. So if council wishes to adjust financial things, it's easier to do than changing the bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll cut to the direction and discussion from the last meeting. So, and I've summarized these. There were basically 6 points that council sort of gave direction on. So one was outsourcing the PACE program to Clean Foundation. So staff has undertaken that. And so how that works in terms of phasing is once the details around the bylaw and the policy are confirmed by council, then that would inform the development of the subsequent administrative documents by PACE. So the registration form, customer agreement form, and the service agreement. The latter two, the customer agreement form and the service agreement, we would need to go through our legal review process too, because those are sort of capture the sort of the binding nature of that agreement. So that'd be something we have to factor in. On a related note, what we also did was submit a grant application to Natural Resources for grant support to help with the onboarding with Clean Foundation. So if that grant is awarded, that would be $15,000 to sort of help with website development of materials, you name it. So that kind of comes straight. Okay. So that's, as I said, so that's all ready to roll. Does council have any further questions about that relationship with Clean? I did attach with this package the frequently asked questions regarding the Clean Energy Financing Program. But anything unclear or any further questions council may have?
Anyone with any issues at this point? No.
Okay. So the second point was council expressed some concern as to whether the administration fees, how that would work and whether that would provide a barrier. So there's a couple of ways of looking at this. So one is the most important thing is how it works in the Clean Energy Financing Program is that those administration fees become part of the amount that is of the loan amount to the resident. So it's not like there's a barrier up front, it becomes part of that repayment process. So as detailed here, if a qualifying property is eligible for $40,000 of funding, that $650 of fees would be part of that $40,000.
So it's not a barrier.
Yeah, it's not a barrier in that sense. They provide in the report a breakdown of how those fees work out. So largely administrative, but the direct cost of the home energy assessment. So that's the specialist that would do the sort of pre and post work assessment. Again, you may have noticed in the frequently asked questions in section 12 that the program fees are listed as $250. That's because prior to this point, the other 10 municipalities who were part of the program received a subsidy through, or rather Clean received the subsidy through an FCM grant that subsidized those costs for participants in the programs. So that program is over. So now it's, yeah, exactly. Now Clean has said that they will continue to look for any other further grant opportunities that may provide a similar subsidy, but right now the full $650 would be in effect. Also of note is that if you recall in the previous sort of report, just as a reminder, that both Colchester and HRM, they waive fees completely, but they're able to do that because it's all in kind costs. It's their own cost because they have dedicated staff to sort of administer and implement those programs. So that's how they do that. So for us, it's a contracted service. So that's where that's at in terms of administration fees. Does council have any questions about that component?
No.
Okay, so I think that, as I said, I think if I understood right, I think it's important to note that it's not like, oh, to get into the program, you're going to have to pony up $650. It's all becomes part of the overall finance. Yeah.
So what happens if they go into the assessment, but they determine they can't handle the payments or whatever they want?
If they go back, so they're just on the hook for the $650.
Yeah, so that's the question. That's the question I'm asking.
Then Clean would invoice us for those administration fees that were incurred.
For the resident.
Oh, the residents, sorry.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
So that is a barrier. If somebody's on the cusp of not knowing if this is a viable option for them.
Could you write that into the program, perhaps? That the $650 is non-refundable or something?
Well, I just know that in some jurisdictions that upfront cost, that risk was a barrier. And once it was removed, then the other jurisdictions saw more uptake.
Who absorbed the $650 cost?
So is that something that we would like to see? Is that if in that scenario,
I think so. I think that we could absorb it. I mean, if that's gonna be a big barrier, you know, we want people to do this. And the whole,
Well, I think it would be determined based on whether or not they're qualified after the initial assessment.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's sort of part of the evaluation piece too, and is outlined in the policy. But part of the evaluation piece is that assessment of, do these costs make sense? So if you're going to expend, is that sort of cost saving ratio, does that make sense sort of financially for both the homeowner and so on? So that's part of the evaluation process.
okay.
But Councillor Vino, you're suggesting that the what if a resident, the owner of a qualifying property sort of suddenly finds, no, I can't actually meet those payments.
Doesn't feel like that's a risk they can take on or whatever. It's not gonna, you know, I don't want that to be a barrier for them to try, or if they're concerned about it.
As long as the assessment clearly states that they shouldn't move forward. If they just happen to decide not to, and they have all kinds of money, then I don't want to absorb the cost. And I don't want to tie it to income because that gets all complicated. But I mean, the assessment should say they shouldn't move forward, not them just deciding they don't want to.
Yeah, and I think I strongly suspect that the mechanics of that point of the process may well be in the customer agreement that Clean will develop. So perhaps I could follow up with Clean about the mechanics of that.
Yeah, so
And how other people deal.
if the assessment determines that it's after the technology's been put in place, I think it's required that you have to have a one-to-one savings. So it shouldn't, at that point, you should be okay. You put it in, they're paying, but it's offset by the savings.
Yeah.
But let's say that it's not quite one-to-one. You save something, but it's just not quite enough. Then those people tried to do the right thing, but it just didn't work out. The numbers didn't work out, and they're penalized, and they don't know that
No,
before they start. So that may be a barrier for them to try.
to even try. And no, I get that, but I just want the clarity to be that it was not feasible based on the data.
Hmm.
Okay, I will look into that first. Okay. That's great, thank you. The third point that council directed was around borrowing for the PACE program. That is not graded as municipality's cost of finance. So we can't borrow, that's one thing, but in terms of the rate we finance the loan given to the resident, I think what we're proposing is that we just apply the same language that we use for the water supply upgrade program.
Makes perfect sense.
But okay, go
on
ahead.
the surface it did to me.
Again, I think this is something that I think we want to encourage. It's because, you know, it comes down, there's all kinds of reasons why environmentally, and for lots of reasons, sustainability, that we want to see people participate in this program. I recognize that we can't borrow municipal finance corp and then give the money to these. So this cost will be undertaken from our reserves. But then, I mean, it's a bit of a shell game, because then probably we're gonna end up, if we have some other project that we
We'll
just
have to borrow.
then we'll borrow.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the end of the day, municipal finance corp will be the one borrowed for. So I feel that regardless of where the money in theory, what bin we take it from, that instead of going by Scotia Prime, we should be reflecting what our cost to borrow is, because that in reality, that is what's going to happen. And we want to keep that barrier as low as possible, so we have as many participants as we can. I don't think that we're going to get a tsunami wave of people, but we want those who are interested, we want to make it as attractive as possible. That's my view on it.
I just don't know why we would treat a person who wants to reduce their energy costs any different than somebody who doesn't have water to drink.
Well, you may want to revisit that as well.
Yeah, I think the way that our director of finance describes this is that the key here is in terms of what we would lose, so to speak, by not having that money investing ourselves. So the way that sort of so for example, so Tim notes that deposits earn as the Bank of Canada overnight rate plus 0.25%.
Which is what we're doing for water.
Right, so do we, if we have, okay, so here's the thing, so if we want to sort of ensure that our goal is not necessarily to make a modest investment, a modest return, which we could, then we would sort of opt for a variable rate. And then that rate then puts the risk though on the resident, because if the rate goes up, then they're on the hook. Whereas if it's a fixed rate, then the
Everybody
risk
knows
is
exactly what it is.
exactly, it's on us. Now, whether that fixed rate, and I don't know the details, whether that fixed rate could be a number of our own choosing, as opposed to indexed to the Scotiabank rate at the time that the agreement is signed, I don't know. We'd have to sort of investigate that
I
further.
just think it should be the same as what we charge people for putting wells in when they have no water. I don't see why it would be different.
No, absolutely, yeah.
The only argument I think is that I'm not sure how thoughtful we were when we chose that one.
Well, I don't even remember what it is, to be truthful.
It's whatever the Scotiabank rate is at the time of signing. So the idea is, again, it's about a fixed rate, so it's a known cost for the resident.
You know, it's right at that moment,
Yeah.
whether you want to do it or whether you don't.
So, yeah, I know other, like, for example, other municipal units like Model, for example, are charging a flat 2%.
Right. Yeah.
Bridgewater's 1%. Those are different than what Scotiabank would offer, but
Yeah.
they lower the barrier for folks. And-
Yes.
Well, chances are we're taking their reserves. I get that.
Yeah, the the listing of what other municipal units charge is in your package, in
Yeah.
the question and answer section, and Modal is 2%, Bridgewater 1%. So a theory I would have as for those rates is they were established in a different interest rate environment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, interest rates are
the-
climbing.
regardless of what the interest rate environment, council is still, you can decide how much you want to incent the behavior that's intended to be incented. So it's still your call, what the interest rate you want to establish, but I suspect that's some of the history of the comparators.
Well, you know, I'm not the finance director. I mean, it's all a question of money. We're gonna lend them the money at a low interest rate, but we don't want to be, you know.
You don't want to cost you money too much.
No, because, and I don't see why it should be different, so somebody needs to tell me what would make financial sense if we blend both rates at the same rate, what it should be.
Tara's
Okay.
gonna see if Tim's down there just to come back up with the water, just so we
You
understand.
know, I don't
the
want
water
it
rate.
1%, 2%, I don't know, what can we live with?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Jonathan, on the fly, and I know I've read the material, the water, the well loan program cannot be dovetailed into this, it's a distinct program? Or can it become part of the PACE program?
Well, it can, the only one that does that, I believe, is Modal, that includes the well upgrade as part of that, as part of that PACE
Yeah.
program. But PACE in and of itself is in terms of energy retrofit,
Yeah,
energy
energy
efficiency.
retrofit.
So there are distinct programs in that sense. But in terms of the mechanics of it, they're essentially the same. It's the same section of municipal
Same
government.
thing, yeah.
Well, I think it would be smart to combine.
Well, I don't,
because-
I don't care.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But Tim's not available, so.
Yeah, so back to the discussion about our other PACE bylaw for water. I know you must be working on like a sewer upgrade
Yeah.
component to that. I think that was also a request, so I'm not sure if it's all gonna be lumped together and mashed into one big bylaw, if you want to separate them. I think the goals, the aspirational goals of this are to benefit the resident, but it also has a community benefit.
Oh,
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones are strictly
Individual.
to the benefit of the individual. That's, I think, the only distinction I would draw. And that's why this behavior we want to incent as much as possible, because it aligns with broader societal goals.
Yeah, this is, as Councillor Vino infers, this is about clean energy, and this is
Yeah,
about
I get
GHG
that.
emissions accordingly, yes. And also
But
cost
if you're a
savings. for
family
residents.
with a water, that's more important to you probably than clean energy, yeah. whatever.
Okay.
You have to choose. You don't have to choose one or the other.
No, you don't have to choose, but
What's more important? Not rigid.
So just to sort of clarify then, as I said, so staff recommendation was that we just, so to keep it streamlined with the water supply upgrade lending program, that we have applied the same Scotiabank's prime interest rate.
yeah,
But it sounds like council wants to look at, can we adopt our own separate interest rate, whatever that, or different
whatever
interest
that may
rate?
be.
Okay,
But given the current interest rate environment, as Dan pointed out,
It's,
and when they put 1%, that's what money is costing, that money's a lot more expensive.
yeah,
And Scotia, that's almost 6%.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we have to borrow, I mean, I don't know.
But it doesn't cost us 6% to borrow, does it?
Yeah, well, but it's not so much, if I understand it correctly, it's not so much that we're borrowing, it's simply that we're not investing. So we're not getting that return on the interest we would of that investment.
No, and I know we haven't done the wastewater management strategy yet, but if we start spending millions and millions and millions of dollars here at some point in time.
So what's,
I think we should have a fixed rate. I don't care. Yeah, and I don't think, well, I've said it enough. I just think it should be the same as the water one, whatever we choose. And I'm not sure we should combine the programs because,
yeah, my personal recommendation would be to keep them separate.
well, because we administer the water one ourselves. And this
Exactly.
one here, we're gonna hire somebody
Exactly.
else to administer.
Yeah,
So.
so there's a different mechanics to it.
Yeah.
to that. But, okay,
So you can come back with, somebody can tell us what they think the best rate is, that we can live with financially.
Aaron, what is our rate for borrowing? We need the information, like.
Well, it's
we need to
gonna,
know
it's
that.
gonna be higher than what we're gonna charge these people.
yeah, but again, we're not borrowing. Yeah, we're
Probably
simply not
using
investing.
reserves, But it's
Yeah.
just that if we get into a place where we
Yeah.
gotta borrow money because our reserves are gone.
Yeah, so it's where it becomes a matter of, well, there's two things, as we'll get to in a second. One is it becomes a matter of what do we lose in terms of what interest we would have generated through our own investment.
Part of our income.
And then the other aspect is when we make a commitment, which is the next point, in terms of we take that out of the equation that we would invest in another project, and as you know, as Councillor Vino said, it's become a bit of a shell game because then we would probably have to borrow for those
Something
something
else.
else. All right, but on to that next point, we'll come back to the interest rate. So the point 4, the maximum financing for each of the program financing. So council in May was sort of seemed interested in that 40 a maximum of $40,000 or 15%, whichever is less. And that provides great leeway. So based on that, what we need to determine is what would be the annual program. So a couple of options, and these are by all means not the only ones, but so if we did a $400,000 per year program allocation with a 10-year repayment terms. So again, Tim had crunched the numbers and how this looked. So this with an interest rate of 5.95, which it was on November 8th. Which would result in a total of a $2.4 million allocation by year 10. So that would be your fixed amount. So then in year 11, that first year loan will be paid out. So then you're back to, and you maintain that tenant. So that would be a total ongoing $2.4 million amount of our reserves that are tied up in the program at year 10, that is. Okay. Or if you opted for, a 15-year repayment plan, which is,
Well, that's even worse.
in terms of the total amount, yeah. I mean, the benefit of that, of course, is that it makes them sort of the per payment amount for residents less.
Yeah.
So it spreads it out. But yes, so the total amount at 400,000 per fiscal for a 15-year would be max out at $3.6 million investment commitment.
That's our worst case scenario. I think it would be awesome if we had that update, but I feel very strongly we probably will not. And I'm not too, you might get a peak once or twice, but I think in general, I think we won't have that as an issue.
I have, by the way, requested data from Clean about what the other municipal units, what kind of uptake they've had, because it would be interesting to get those stats as to where, but I haven't got that information yet. But I would love to see just what the uptake is, the size of the project, the total overall commitment.
Yeah, what's their annual expenditure?
Exactly. So, and I think too, just sort of building off what Councillor Vino said, I think it's highly unlikely we would reach that maximum amount each year, partly because a lot of the projects are going to be, they're not going to max out at $40,000.
No.
A lot of the projects are going to be 2,000 here, 10,000 there, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'd be nice if you're making sound financial decisions with the most information you can get. I'm not hung up on the 10 or 15 years. I
think 10 years is reasonable.
Yeah, well,
I don't think you want a warranty longer than that.
No, and it's way better than what we're offering now, so I guess we gotta look at it from that perspective too. Right now, we're not doing anything. Now we're gonna at least start a program. We got 10 years, we're gonna charge you some interest, not what the banks do. Yeah.
And we're in a good position with our reserves.
Yeah, but we gotta stay there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, that ultimate decision there is going to be tied up with, you know, trying to understand that in the context of what other needs might council have. And, you know, we're all well aware that, you know, there's a lot of wastewater work that's coming up. So those are the things that enter into the equation.
Yeah.
The other thing I will add too is Clean is open to year by year sort of contract in terms of how much the program amounts are. So if council wishes to sort of enter into a multi-year agreement or a year by year, that's all those, and to ensure that sort of flexibility for council, then that's an option too.
Oh, yeah, we can always get out.
Okay, hold that. We'll come back to sort of see if there's any decisions on these couple of items in a second. But the fifth point that was brought up was the assess the impact on debt service ratio. As noted, we cannot borrow money for this purpose, so that's not a non-issue. And then also council asked about other programs. So there's a couple. They're not. I mean, they range, right? So Housing Nova Scotia has the small loans assistance program. It covers a range of scopes. Similarly, the home ownership preservation that include some aspect of energy retrofits, whether it's simply caulking of windows and doors. Those programs are largely geared towards sort of low-income homeowners. So those are those. There's also the home warming programming, homewarming.ca. Sponsored by Nova Scotia Power and the Government of Nova Scotia and administered by Efficiency Nova Scotia. And again, low-income homeowners, no charge energy assessment, coordination of draft proofing, installation, and so on, at no cost to eligible. So that really is the focus there. And then the more recent program announcement was the federal initiative, Canada Greener Homes Initiative. So that has several components, whether it's grants for smaller grants for partial reimbursement of costs, offsetting the Energuide home, which is the home energy assessment costs, or the interest-free loans of up to $40,000 for over term repayment term of 10 years for major home retrofits. So there is some sort of competition, so to speak, in there, but that federal program, this was just announced, I think, a couple of months ago. And that is quite that scope there of the $40,000 interest free.
If they want to take advantage of that one instead of the one we're offering, go for it. That's your choice you make.
So that's the information in response to the direction from the main meeting. So what it comes down to then is those 2 points in particular, unless there's any other issues the council wishes to bring forward. But the two options or the 2 points for decision remain around the proposed interest rate, whether that is Scotiabank's make that the same as the water supply upgrade lending program or set another rate of interest.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just determining what that maximum program amount is and the term of repayment. So those are where we're at.
Well, I'm assuming that the finance department took a look at the maximum amount that you've suggested.
Yes, yeah.
And that it works for us.
That works for
I'm
us.
making that assumption. So really, to me, I don't have, as long as they're comfortable with it, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
But it's just the interest rate and what we're gonna do.
Okay.
But I can't see why we can't give notice subject to that little bit of adjustment.
Well, I guess just from Jonathan's program report, he said about the new federal, that makes me think a little more about doing this. Like, in my view, I mean, I know you've done the report and they've, done the finances, but so do we, so I know, and when I know we gave direction that we want to look at this, but that's, for me, that's an important part of it. when
That's
I'm
only
thinking
for
about
low
this.
income people though. It doesn't address. the
So,
growth.
so the other one's not a low income?
No.
The one that we're
It's not
proposing?
high
We
income,
don't have the lens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that clears it up, yeah,
and that's why it's free to you.
because it's based on income, okay, I knew the other ones were, but I wasn't sure about
Ours
the
is not.
interest-free loan. I know the home fitting, the home heating one is all low income, but I didn't see anything that says that it's interest-free loan based on low
Yeah,
income, but is it?
the federal program?
Yes.
No, I don't think it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
yes,
it's
yes.
just, yeah. Yeah, but those provincial ones are.
Yes, I know those are income based,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure about the Canada Greener Homes, if it's tied to property assess. So the PACE one is if you sell your home, if you participate in PACE and you take out a loan, and you
yes.
sell your home, it travels with the property.
Yeah.
So you're not continually paying for 10 years for an upgrade on that property that you're no longer living in. The
Oh,
new
because-
homeowner assumes that, and I don't know if the federal government wants.
That's a good question. Yeah.
But
But I
that's the case with all the money we get.
But just an example, I helped a person do an application for one of these provincial loans, the home warming. I think their income was maybe $300 over the edge, so they didn't qualify. They need the work done. This might be a program where they could tap into because it's better than, going to the bank and borrowing money. But they weren't eligible because their income was just over the limit.
Yeah.
So.
So they have options.
They have
This gives people
options.
options.
Exactly, yeah.
Because some things will, needed to be done, like windows needed to be replaced and things. I think this will
So what's the
cover it.
next step for us?
Well, your point, I mean, I think you can go ahead with the bylaw. Oh, wait, there's that one. So the one thing that would need to be captured in the bylaw is in terms of the payment term, so the 10 or 15 years.
10 we agreed on.
So 10, so we can make that adjustment. So then therefore, that's the only thing that requires clarification for the bylaw. So council could go ahead with a notice to,
Notice to a,
oh, right,
And
You
I
did.
sent you two minor matters.
Yeah.
Shouldn't hold up giving notice.
no.
But
And I can correct those. So yeah, so legal review, so Sam provided, just sort of your, may I go over them now?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. So section 4.01. So Sam notes that make it clear that the charge is payable by the owner of the qualifying property and their successors and assigns. So this is the point that Tara was just making
if
about
you
that.
sell it,
Yeah.
it goes to somebody else.
So I can readily make that clear. Similarly, paragraph 4.04, just in addition of pay, after the word payable, add the option of the, add at the option of the municipality. So that's in terms of the
it
acceleration.
doesn't automatically go to default.
Right.
Unless we decided to default.
And that's been, okay, understood. So we can make those clarifications as well. So
We can give first notice to amend the bylaw or adopt the bylaw. Adopt the bylaw.
does that work in terms of sequencing, Pam?
No, just give notice to adopt.
Okay, so with those three adjustments then,
Yeah,
so adjustments to 4.01, 4.03, and 4.04.
somebody prepared to give notice?
So
Move we
move.
give notice,
I'll move we give notice.
seconded. Oh, sorry, seconded, discussion.
And we're gonna be adjusting
That is my-
on the interest rate.
Yes,
That's the only outstanding item there.
So in that respect, would it make sense then, and looking to Tara and Dan, would it make sense to sort of come like as soon as next week with,
sooner the better.
so next week with a proposal as to what works in terms of interest rate?
And that-
This is Cal anyway, so.
Yeah, so it's gotta
So
go,
we can bring
so this
that
is
forward.
just, yeah, so nothing takes place till next week anyway.
Okay,
We're just
so
giving recommendation to cancel.
understood. So then we can bring that next week and then that'll finalize the details in the policy and
Yeah.
then we can roll out all that. Does that make sense?
John,
Sorry, yes.
where would it, if council chooses to do something related to the administration fee, where does that belong? You know, bylaw or policy?
That would. Question.
Yeah, so I think we
Yeah.
have, well, that was the 650, that was the first discussion point was if it's, do you want to eliminate a potential barrier?
Well, we were gonna take it out if the report suggested that the data didn't make
Right.
sense.
This, to me, sounds like, because it is something that would be caught in the customer service agreement, it sounds like it's an administrative detail. So for us, if that, I want to double check that it's not already captured in Clean's administrative processes. And whether or not we would need a clause, I think it would fit with the financing details in the policy rather than the bylaw. I can double check that. Sam, do you have an opinion on that?
I think policy is where it should be.
Okay, and the policy,
Yeah.
okay, and the policy has the interest rates. so that-
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah, okay,
thank you.
okay,
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried.
okay. Thank you all. Good discussion.
Thank you. Okay, people, we're, to the best of my knowledge, we're in camera.
That was just for the one last, we still need to make a motion for the file.
Oh, the policy. Oh, so we just need
Just a motion to, notice of intention to adopt.
to, notice of intention to adopt the policy.
Well, we have
We need
some
to
work
know
we
that.
do
Some work
on
to
it,
do
yeah.
on
Well, you gotta
Yeah.
bring that back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we're
we'll
gonna
bring
bring that
that
next
back
week.
next week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that good? Okay, all right, thanks again.
Okay, so to the best of my knowledge, a motion to be in camera.
So moved.
Second. So moved in second, discussion.